See, the double recording is messing me up because I feel like I feel like we're not really recording, but then I'm over here, so I'm doing all kinds of wild things.
We got the chips over here.
For no reason.
We got the chips in the view.
For no reason.
That's our main camera.
Hello, friends. We are reporting to you live from somewhere.
So we got some chips. They got Himalayan pink salt.
I harvested the salt myself. I went to visit my ancestors. Because, everybody got 4% of Genghis Khan DNA in them. Give or take a few percentages. So, so I went back to see them.
You got your DNA?
Yeah.
I think we talked about that.
Bro, I'm 50% Dothraki, 50% Jabari, yo. It was wild. They couldn't put that on a map, though. Like, you can get the map. They didn't have a map for me. They sent me 2 figurines. They sent me Aquaman and they sent me M'Baku. And I was like, fuck am I supposed to do with this, man? One of these guys ain't even Dothraki. They couldn't even find a Drogo. That's how you know those dudes. Who the ones that own Ancestry? This
some Christian.
The Church for Latter-day Saints or something like that. Peace to them. Crazy. They getting that tax-free money.
Word. So we're here, RevFit Radio. I'm Shawn Garcia.
My name is John, aka Rene.
And we're here at our new studio setup. So we all fancy now.
This right here is the stuff from Wakanda. Okay? You need to know that. It looks like my hand is on it. Vibranium magnetics. It doesn't even let my hand get that much closer. If I do, it will just absorb my hand. Look. See, I'm literally pushing my hand through the wall. You saw that? Yo. Run it back.
It's even more magical if you're just listening on the podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Then we all just disappeared on the podcast.
Oh, you can't even see our heads right now. So we're here. Big shout out to the People's Forum.
Yeah.
New space over on 37th Street, 320 West 37th Street. And the People's Forum, just some quick info. People's Forum, part of the Poor People's Campaign, is kind of a leftist education hub that just got created in New York City, right near Times Square. It's pretty amazing that they were able to secure this massive space, and is a dope space for poor and working people to come organize, mobilize, educate themselves on revolutionary politics and strategy and all that good stuff. So it's a really, really dope space. And also they are they're acting as a hub to all of these leftist organizations out in the city doing work in the communities and doing education work. And they extended an invitation to the revolutionary fitness community for us to come out and contribute and to do some education work here. But also they have this dope multimedia room that they're developing that we're sitting in right now that has the super soundproof vibranium walls, but dope digs and really, really, really dope resource. So thanks a lot to People's Forum. We'll be mentioning them a lot over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
How you like the space when you walked in?
First of all, I don't know if it's 320B or 320 and a half, but I walked into the wrong place when I first showed up. And they had those kind of the bells. You got to ring it, and then the guy at the desk is going to look at you through the glass door and be like, no, I'm not going to let you in, or yes, you look like you're here to fix a toilet, And so I was like, well, I missed the fact that I had headphones on, whatever. But when I finally arrived here, I was like, damn, look at all these books. Look at all this artwork.
Word.
And I was like, this is phenomenal. And then the young lady said, you're going to go downstairs to the studio. And I said, let's go. And it's dope, man. It's dope.
Yeah, so check out their website. I think it's peoplesforum.org. Arsenio, can you confirm? I think it's peoplesforum.org.
Shout out to my brother Arsenio in the place.
Yes.
Hooking it up, holding it down.
Let's do a little pan here so y'all can see the situation going on right now. So, that's us. We're on camera. Am I recording this? Yeah, we're recording. That's our little.
Yo, that was your I have a question tone. You went up a couple of octaves. Am I recording this?
That's the vibranium walls. This is
Can't get too close.
Camera setups. And there goes Arsenio.
There he is.
Mr. Garcia.
No relation.
No relation.
That we know of.
Arsenio Garcia. Yes, Angie, we got the chips with the Himalayan sea salt.
Listen,
Arsenio already breaking the door.
if Shawn and I merged, a guy like Arsenio might be the one that emerges.
That's exactly the thought process. But yeah, Arsenio, welcome Arsenio coming on into the production team for RevFit Radio. So you'll be getting a lot of support from us. Oh, here we go, picture time.
Yeah.
Yep. And then we got the official glass panel. The Yeti's up, sitting in the other room over there. You see it? There you go in the reflection. So yeah, so this is gonna be a dope setup. They're still rolling it out, but they've been gracious enough to let us use it, and you know, get some good quality audio into your ears. We're still trying to. This is our first time in the space, so we're trying to sort out all the Wi-Fi and all that kind of technical stuff. So, you know, we're not streaming on YouTube today like we plan to, but we will get this on YouTube either tonight or tomorrow, so you can see the recording for sure. Yep. And there's a camera here, a camera there, a camera there, a camera there. I don't even know where the hell to look anymore.
This is what it looks like when we are finally going live and podcasting. Welcome. People's Forum, what that?
Word. So RevFit Radio episode 2, season 6. We were gonna have an episode last week, but you might have heard, but I was like deathly ill. So
I heard that.
Yeah, I'm still. You can still hear a little bit of it in my throat, but I was really. I mean, that was probably the sickest I've been in like 15 years.
Bro, I don't even know. I thought I was the one that got sick in the relationship. You know what I'm saying? But you did it. You did it for us.
I know,
and it was no
man.
joke. You were down for the count.
Usually, like, my sickness looks like an itchy throat for a day or something like that.
Yeah.
I almost never get sick, and I know that's cliche, but it's the truth for sure. I almost never get sick. And,
that's all that kombucha.
Yeah, exactly.
Kombucha.
Get that kombucha and the Himalayan sea salt. But yeah, man, I got sick. I don't know. I think it was a combination of like the baby starting school, bringing those germs home. I had a really heavy workload the past month or two.
Mental stress be wearing people down. Yo, I know when my kids started, I was feeling all types of things after they started. You know, like I wasn't worried about it up until that point, at least that I felt. But then after they started, I realized I wasn't even focusing on work the way I normally do, and so it was weird.
Word. So I think it was a combination of all that, and it just hit me. So I was like, it was a Monday. I was speaking up in the Bronx at a college. Started feeling a little like itchy throat or whatever, and a little exhausted. I got home, because I went to work and I was like, oh man, I'm feeling really drained. So I actually canceled my evening. Went home and it just hit me.
Yeah.
And I was like in bed for like 3-4 days straight, just straight in and out of fever.
Yeah.
You know, just sweating it out, drinking water, getting all that good medicine, the plant medicine.
Lay in the crushed ice bed.
Word, is that the trick?
That in the Jabari section of Wakanda.
Word. I was heating up, so there was times I was definitely like going into the shower and the bath and trying to cool down or whatever.
Did you know that? I know that y'all had Wim Hof up in the place, right?
Yeah.
Did he ever break down what the sitting in the ice really does to the muscles?
Yeah, I think we did an episode on it a couple seasons ago. But basically, it's like what it's doing is not so much to the muscles; it's increasing dark fat.
Wait a second.
And so there's two types of fats: the light fat and the dark.
Wait a second.
The dark fat.
I need the mind blown emoji.
So you think
there's different kinds of fat?
Yeah.
Is this like
so there's like the useless white
Star
fat.
Wars? Are we talking about?
There's the useless white fat, and then there's the dark meaty fat, which is almost like the same texture as muscle fiber, and that's like people who live in like cold regions who they're still slim.
Yeah.
And you're like, how can you be so slim with little body fat?
Yeah.
It's because they got a lot of this dark, dense fat on them, which almost looks like muscle mass.
Damn.
So in any case, so it increases that.
All right.
And then it also, there's some stimulation to the hormonal system. And so it secretes certain hormones throughout your body when you put yourself through those extreme climate changes.
I read something somewhere. I think it was maybe a Kobe Bryant video or something where he was saying the reason he gets in, maybe it was LeBron, they get into the ice bath right after they work out because the constriction, when the muscles constrict, they're pushing out all the liquid that would cause pain or cramps and all that. The muscle constricting pushes all that liquid out, and what comes in its place is blood. Mm-hmm. So the reoxygenated blood, because of the ice bath, is pumped in instead of all these, I guess, chemicals or enzymes or whatever that's released in muscles when they break and stuff that would cause the pain and all that stuff. Yep. And I was like, damn, that makes perfect sense, even though I can't explain it. But
yeah, it's all of that. So there's a lot of benefits for it, for sure.
But this dark fat, light fat, that's bugging me out.
Yeah, you got to watch, if you go on YouTube, there's a Vice documentary on the Iceman, on Wim Hof. Damn. And he breaks down a little bit of that. And then we did that podcast. I think it was in season 3 maybe of RevFit Radio that we did a podcast with his crew out in the U.S.
Are you basically done if you have both fats? Because I think I got both.
I think you want to decrease the white fat. You always want to decrease anything white. You know what I'm saying? Hey. All right. So but yeah. So I was mad sick, sweating it out, and I'm a hippie, so I ain't go to the doctor.
Wow for that.
So I was like, let me just try to get through it, and if after 2 or 3 days I'm still messed up, then I'm gonna go to the doctor, because I know what they was gonna do. They're gonna throw me antibiotics.
Antibiotics are terrible.
They're gonna tell me to take Advil and all this kind of stuff. So I was just like, let me just try to thug it out. And I did a couple nights where I did NyQuil, just to help me go to sleep. But I was just like chopping up garlic cloves, soaking it in honey. Yeah. Jenny was making these crazy like blends of garlic and onion and peppers and habaneros and all that.
So your pause was basically saying, there's no space for illness. I got all this natural funk I got to get rid of.
Exactly.
That's gangster.
Yeah, man. So I was able to... Shout out to Jenny, too, who took care of me. Shout out to Jenny.
The illest.
Word. So we back. And the guest that we had booked for episode 2 from the NYU family study, we're going to be having them on next week. So Dia from the NYU family study, which is a dope study. Definitely check out next week's episode, where they're doing this research on how diet and environment affects
anxiety,
the body.
Right?
No.
Not specifically
cancer.
Anxiety. Oh, damn.
Well, not only cancer, but I think different chronic diseases. So how
depression. I thought
how it's all linked up.
I
with
did
it.
look.
Yes,
but
depression.
I got that CTE brain.
So yeah. So how diet and environment are. There's been a lot of studies on that stuff, but this is a more recent study, and Dia and a couple other members of the team are really trying to emphasize the recruitment of people of color to participate in this study. So we're going to be talking about that, because what happens a lot with a lot of this medical research is that there's low turnout for people of color. One, because there's not that directed energy from the medical researchers to make sure that they're getting into the communities, or they don't know how to connect with the communities. And then 2 is like there's just like this natural lack of trust that people of color have with the medical industry. So we're going to be talking about that stuff next week.
My boy, who's currently in the nursing school, was telling me he took a course in part of his studies that broke down the history of, medicine. And the only folks that, I guess the only medicines that have been developed because of the people who got the illnesses that needed to be healed and cured, right? And those folks being folks that had, some affluency and some money and stuff. And so, that's why you have I guess, I don't want to speak and without all the proper information, but it seemed to me why there are certain diseases that target, people of color at a higher rate are still present and still prevalent without real, responses by, the medical field, because those folks don't have resources that would sponsor, the research it takes to develop the cures, and how 99.9% of the medicines are found in the Amazon jungle or in some sort of natural state that they then go and take to a lab and basically.
Exactly.
Bastardized, which, both fascinating things that made a lot of sense. And I was just like, but it's just everywhere you see this inequality, and it's like sad that healthcare is big business and not what it should be, which is, taking care of people's health.
Yeah, word. So I think that's what they're talking about. So next week's episode, we're going to go deep into that stuff. We'll be live on YouTube, hopefully, so you can give us some questions. We're live on Instagram, kind of, sort of. So definitely, ask any questions on Instagram. And then we're resharing the Instagram. Can you reshare Instagram live feed? Nah,
I think you just got to come on and tap in.
You're watching.
You gotta see the homies.
Word.
If you're not following Shawn RevFit, what are you?
This is the RevFit NYC page.
Well, if you're not following all of the pages, what's going on? RevFit NYC.
So maybe
NYC Rev Fitness.
Word.
Just find us. We're not hard to find. I smell like mad Tide Pods or whatever because I was doing laundry. So that's one way you can find us.
Smells so good.
Thank you. I told you.
I thought it was your hair.
I did it up today. I got the coconut oils up in here.
I thought it was the beard.
Oh, I got the other oils up in there.
I didn't want to go.
We need to get some sponsorships, maybe.
Yeah. What kind of products are you using?
I'm not telling them. Nada gratis.
Pay those bills first.
Yeah.
Word. All right.
The
cool.
Batman angle.
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
Can it hang?
Arsenio.
Arsenio doing it up. Producer
through.
style.
Look at this.
Woo! There we go.
Hey,
we plugged in.
Floating angle.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So this week's topic. What's up? What up? King Foria.
Yo.
What's up? How you doing?
El Rey.
So this week's topic. What we talking?
Allies and activism. Allyship and activism.
Activism and allyship.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty broad subject. But yeah, so let's try to tackle it. And also too, I think this is a pretty relevant conversation, considering all the kind of mobilizing that's happening in the U.S., especially around race relations, and just the attack on the Black and brown communities. There's a lot of questions that people have. What's my role?
Mm-hmm.
What position do I play? What position should I play? All that kind of stuff. So we're gonna be talking about that, and then linking it up with fitness and health and food and all that good stuff. So what's your initial thoughts?
I don't know, man. I'm sort of anti-labels just because I know a lot of people put a lot of stock into labels, right? So I guess in some ways I would have considered myself an ally, but then I'm confronted with a lot of folks who I appreciate, who I respect, who I try to follow in terms of like the activism that they do, the activist work that they do. And I feel like a lot of times those folks tend to err on the side of like or skew towards like super activism, where they're like, if you're not as active as I am, if you don't believe as strongly as I do, we don't want your help. You know what I'm saying? And so then like I feel like that limits so many people that we could use in support of the cause, and so I guess where I fall on it usually is whatever it takes. I hesitate to say by any means necessary, but ultimately, like if I have a goal, a vision, I'm gonna try to get there as responsibly as possible, as ethically as possible, right? But if I gotta get down with some folks that in other circles I may not really rock with, but they're trying to support, maybe they're ignorant of some things and they're trying to be educated and they don't know how to go about it, in any other way. I'm going to try to invite them in. If it doesn't jive, then we can maybe have the conversation. But, so I feel like I consider myself in between ally and activist, right? Because I live with these morals about equality and, changing things so that certain groups that have been oppressed historically get more access. But then I feel like in some circles I would probably be seen as not radical enough, so more ally in that way. So I don't know. Right. I feel like a lot of it is like, how do you live? What do you do in support of this, title of activist or the cause that you want to be an activist within or for? So I'm conflicted, man. So I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Word. And I think too, what happens is that. You know what I mean? Like the form of struggle that you take upon, because like everyone's going to be able to do what they can do based off of, what their lifestyle is, where they find themselves, their family responsibilities. So like you're saying, some folks would be like, oh, you're not doing enough, you're not active enough. But then it's like, what definition are they placing on struggle and activism?
Right.
If they're saying you're not engaged enough, and then on the other end, I find that there's some people who find it comfortable to sit in a position of allyship because they don't really need to do as much, or they
don't
think
experience a lot of the the negative side of the cause that they're an ally for.
Right.
They benefit from certain things. They have some privilege, so they can kind of like support, but they're not really falling victim to any of the issues directly. So yeah, that makes sense.
So maybe we can start with an example talking about like the Black Lives Matter movement, which I think is something that a lot of people know about. And also too, there's a lot of of that stigma that you're talking about, or that polarizing that happens. So like for instance, in terms of like people who when there's a struggle of like a historic oppression, that's still it's present day oppression. That's something that you're saying like the black community is facing that the hardest. They're the ones that are getting attacked at the highest rates, killed in the streets, all that kind of stuff. Just being black in America is still a thing. And even if you're, white, Latino, or, like however like you can say, oh, I'm a person of color, you're still not black and you're not living that black experience. And you haven't gone, your family hasn't gone through that same experience. Now, your family might have gone through a different oppression, like colonial kind of oppression, or something like that, but it's just a different experience, especially in America. So then you got people who who would say, oh, okay, well, I want to be an ally to this movement, how do I do that? So what do you think, how does someone like, so for instance, if someone's white, what's their role in the Black Lives Matter movement?
Well, I think that it's important to listen first and foremost, just in general, any cause, especially if you're thinking about the Black Lives Matter movement, and if you're not a black person, when you step into the place, you got to see what's going on, figure out what they're trying to do at that moment, right, if you want to support, and sort of follow, and support in that way. What do they need you to do? And I'm also a firm believer in sort of like your sphere of influence, and wherever you do have power, or like you do experience privilege, you can leverage that, so if it's a white person, white man, white woman, a lighter skinned person that is a person of color, if you're in those circles, take back the information that you're getting directly from the source, from the Black Lives Matter movement, from the folks that are involved in that, and share it with the people that are in your circle that may not have that same interest, and that's, I think, a way. And I feel like just spreading the word, the like firsthand word, firsthand account, firsthand knowledge is a good way to be an ally. But again, there are some folks that are like, nah, we don't want you down with this, right? Like we don't need you, and I feel like I think about my wife, who's always talking about compromise as a way to change things. You can never, so like, the whole Bernie, Donald Trump thing, it was like, okay, they were basically, she's not saying this is the way I understand it, so I don't want her to get upset at me when she hears me say this. They were both basically like the poles, right? The polar opposites, the most extreme you could be on both sides, very conservative versus very liberal. And then Hillary being in the middle, the person who you could sort of like, you can see doing that political work, because politics is all about, first of all, I don't really enjoy politics, don't mess with it, but I can see how if you're trying to get things done, you got to make deals, you got to compromise, you got to sort of reach across the aisle and grab both sides. Trump doesn't look like he's doing that, right? And could Bernie have done that? And it seems like that's the reason why this dude won, right? Like, people were split on the blue side. Like, oh, we want to rock with that because he's on that, super people shit, and she's more like, the devil, evil, whatever. Politics is politics. They're all in the same bed in my mind. But, you got to find that middle ground if you want to get some progress done. Socially speaking, I would say it's easier to do that. And then you're gonna have those folks that are so radical, they're like, nah, we don't even want to see you in the space, right? I follow a page on Instagram that was really trying to be extra honest and upfront about what Afro-Latino means, right? Like, you cannot claim it if you're not dark-skinned. If you're not black and Latino, you should not be claiming Afro-Latino. And they were pointing to Gina Rodriguez and some other folks that previously very upfront, about the fact that they are, I guess, not, don't have the features of an African person or whatever. And so now all of a sudden, I think Gina Rodriguez was claiming that to get a role or something like that. And like they were really passionate about the fact that you can't claim it if you're not black skinned. And then of course there's so many back and forth issues about it, like Latinos that are fair skinned saying one of my parents is black. I believe I am Afro-Latino. And so it goes back to that point, like you said, if you're not actually black, you don't have that experience. As much as you can understand it from what relatives have gone through, from what you see every day, being a person that's conscious and aware, you don't walk in that aisle. You don't walk in that lane, So I feel like you need to listen to those folks that are doing that work. And there's so many people doing that work. If you can't rock with someone because they seem to be too hardcore, find someone that's willing to support you and educate you, in that work. So, I don't know.
Word. So what if, because what I find that happens a lot on this question specifically with the Black Lives Matter, but also of other struggles. Maybe we'll talk about another one too that I could think of that's pretty relevant to us. When it's like the question of feminism, but like, you might have someone who is not black, who's in the space, who wants to contribute, who wants to help, support, play a role, allyship, but then they might feel like they have a stronger skill set on something. Maybe I'm a stronger speaker, maybe I'm a stronger writer, and that happens a lot because of course. That benefit, that privilege that one benefits from, they have, more formal education and all these things, and a lot of times, and so easily that person could play a supportive role and then start moving into a leadership role, and
take that position away from someone who has lived the experience. It's funny. I think that that's one of those things, man. The movement has to be led by the folks who are directly impacted, right? So even if you're someone that, you would be better received in a majority white space because of your access to the language or whatever the case may be, you got to fall back. You know what I'm saying? You got to make the connection, maybe get the folks in the door, but you can't be the voice. You can't be, I don't even think you can be the front person, right? Because I think that dilutes the movement, you know what I'm saying, in terms of like the optics of it, right? So you can be a supporting, role player, but I don't ever think that role should be fulfilled by someone who's not directly, down with that, whatever the movement is, right? So that's where the allyship I think comes in. Strictly like super supportive roles, behind the scenes support. I know there are a lot of famous entertainers that are not throwing money, but are financing movements, and they want to do it anonymously, and I feel like that's the move, that is an ally in the realest sense, because a lot of times these movements struggle to raise money and stuff. So, if you are a person who has access to a community space, a community room or whatever it is, and you can get that move, but you should just make that move.
leveraging that privilege and access to elevate.
Don't feel like you got to be the leader, and they're present as a point person or a spokesperson for the cause in that space. You know what I'm saying?
And also too, what I find is that maybe I'm not the best speaker, or maybe I'm not the best writer, but I can develop that. Especially if I'm living the struggle and I'm engaged in the struggle, I can develop those leadership skills. I could develop those, organizing skills. Those things can come if I'm given the opportunity and the support to do so. So, taking a step back and being an ally isn't about getting kudos from the group you are supporting. That's right. A lot of people are just trying to get props or trying to get accepted or get legitimized by a certain group or folks, and that gives them some clout, and that's not what it's about either. Playing the really background role where you really step back and you're out of the frame, out of the focus altogether, I think is key. But then there's definitely the shades of gray where, like for instance, the Black Lives Matter movement, you might have someone who is of a higher, a lighter complexion, but who identifies as black, or maybe they're Afro-Latino or something like that. And then there's there's questions like, oh, what role do you play? Can you take a leadership role? All that kind of stuff. There was that crazy. What was that woman's name that was in the NAACP?
Oh my God, Dolezal or whatever. You talking about
Whatever.
I know you're talking.
Yeah, what's
that lady
her?
that was fronting like she was black, but she was absolutely not black, and anybody who looked at her should have been able to decipher that.
Well, she was based in Seattle, so it's
Oh,
first of all,
true,
right?
okay,
There's
all
not
right,
that many
all
black
right.
people
I
up in
wasn't
the
even
north.
really trying to figure
northwest.
out the actual geographics, but I'm just like, oh, who's looking at this woman and thinking that she's really black? But if you're saying she was in Seattle,
But
I
the
guess.
argument is, some people argued, like, she put herself in such an identifying position as black that, and she had curly hair and whatever.
Yeah. Did she
Dolezal.
Yeah.
Dolezal. Rachel Dolezal, yeah. Some people
R.I.P.
were saying, R.I.P. Some people were arguing, like, well, if she wants to identify as black.
All right,
then-
so okay, so we're talking about like what were they saying that sort of like gender in the sense that race is a construct, right? And so if you feel like you're black, you should be able to claim that you're black, right? The problem I have with that is you are not black. Even if you are a person of color and you can trace your family line and everyone's black in your family, you are a light-skinned person. You know what I mean? So I feel like just the way you're received and dealt with in public, in society, is very different than a dark-skinned person. You know what I mean?
And I think, too, if you're clear that you identify with your African ancestry and some black identity that you might have in your lineage, that's one thing. That's paying homage and giving props to that part of your ancestry or whatever. But it doesn't mean I can put a black stamp on myself now.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, those things get tricky. But then also too, the other argument was, all right, but she put in work. She put in a lot of work, years of work for the black community. So that she get that she get some brownie points.
She was saying that she was black, so she can have brownie points. But she need a lot of brownie points to be black, right? Like she's that white. You know what I mean? Like you're still not black, right? You can identify with the culture as much as you want, but you really dead up are not black skinned. You know what I mean?
She probably had one of those Sims games.
That's
the
like,
Sims games.
Yeah, right.
And she probably had a black character.
She uses all the black emojis on the iPhone, right? Like she keeps them all the darkest. Listen, this will remind me of Fat Joe, right? Because that's my dog, being from the Bronx. Pun was my guy. Unfortunately, I found out about all the abuse and stuff, but that's neither here nor there. But I mean, I struggle with that on a different level, like being a fan of this man still. But I listen to Fat Joe because I enjoy hearing him. He reminds me of like when I was growing up with my boys in high school and that era of music when they were really making music. And he happens to use the N-word a lot. Still, right? As a 50-year-old man. And
he's really light-skinned.
And he's like super light-skinned, right? I can't hate on that. I too am light-skinned. But he gets a pass. I mean, there are a lot of people that get upset. Right. I can see that. But so when you talk about paying dues and having a certain kind of love and like being of the culture, I feel like that's the closest person I can see. Someone like that is definitely a person of color that grew up with black folks, Puerto Ricans, like that essence. You can sort of like get the stamp because the folks are giving you the stamp from that community, right? But he's not saying he's black. He's just saying, yo, we are the same. You know what I mean? And in that way, still, that's obviously that word is very heated and there's a lot on it. So, folks have beef with him using it.
There's something to be
that's
said.
Different, right? Than her,
definitely.
Right? No matter how much work she puts in.
Yeah. There's also something to be said, I think, too, of people of color. And, I don't use the term people of color, kind of trying to diminish blackness. I think there's folks who are black, and then there's people of color that's gonna, include the, Latinos and Asians and all that kind of stuff. What's going on here? Oh, that's so good. But like, there's a lot of folks who, like Latinos, for instance, Puerto Ricans is a great example. Puerto Ricans have a lot of shared experience in the past, 50 to 80 years.
See? Yes. Iris said she was getting a big check and taking up space. The notion of space is critical, right?
So she was getting paid. She was getting paid, and she was taking up that leadership.
A black woman, versus like Fat Joe, who's saying, "Hey, yo, I'm Puerto Rican, but we are basically the same."
Is he Puerto Rican? I thought he was like
he's
Colombian.
Puerto Rican and Cuban.
Cuban.
His wife is Colombian.
Oh, okay.
BX. So, you know, that's a difference, right? He's not saying I am black. You know, let me occupy the space that a black person could have. He's like, nah, I'm Puerto Rican, I'm Cuban, whatever, and I'm in the same space. I'm in the same space. So there's no difference, right? I think that is a big difference.
Right. So but like there's a lot of communities, Chicago, the Mexican and black community, New York, the Puerto Rican and black community, where there's a lot of shared experience, shared struggle, a lot of unity, black and brown unity. And so there is kind of like a pass, I would say, on some things.
But also shared experiences where there is this harmony,
right,
and there is not unity,
right? Oh no, without a doubt.
Interesting too, right?
Yeah, without a doubt.
So regionally speaking, right? Like that is fascinating for me to
without a doubt
to learn about and pay attention to.
Also. And so within that, I mean, it gets complex, but I also think at the end of the day, it's the community that's dealing with the struggle and the oppression directly that really decides who gets a pass, who who can do this work, where should they be, what role should they play, but. Within that, there is definitely an extreme leftist orientation where, like you were speaking about before, where people can say, "Oh, you're not allowed into the space at all.
Right.
There's no role for you." And I understand where that comes from, and I think that there definitely needs to be space created that is like black only space,
right?
Where people can, talk about experience and talk about how to lead the struggle and all these kind of things. That's for sure. But to be extreme leftist where you don't see a role for anybody who's down for the cause, I think that also can be just as bad. Yeah. Where it's like, oh no, you're a white person. You have no role in the Black Lives Matter movement, or you're Latino. You didn't go through the same experience that I went through,
right.
Which is kind of crazy because there is so many black. I mean, like a third or 25% of all Latinos are Afro Latinos, like black, and they've gone through the very similar experience. But that's another subject. But I think it's important that we don't fall into that extreme leftist camp, and that we're not short-sighted and seeing like people do play roles and they can, contribute to the movements. You know what I mean? So
basically, it's like this: there should be spaces where Black Lives Matter, all black spaces, like black-only spaces, those should exist. But there should be spaces where folks who want to be allies, who want to contribute, who want to support any way they can. There should be spaces for those folks too, as long as everyone's moving in the same direction of like progress and access and equality ultimately, right?
And those spaces where there is multinational unity are still led by black folks, you know what I mean?
Right, and the folks who are the like leading members of that, of whatever it is, black folks, women, right? Should be the ones that are in the leadership roles. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But, allies, and then allies from the other side of it, right? Allies should seek the organization or the space that gives them the space that they feel most comfortable in, right? So if you're a white person that wants to support Black Lives Matter and you're trying to get up in the all black only space, that's probably not a good look, right? Like you should probably not do that. Can you work with some other organizations that are in support of, figure that out? You know what I mean? And I feel like that.
Iris brings up a good point. So Iris talks about there's a big trust issue. And so that's where a lot of this kind of like, there's no space for you in this because we just can't trust you. Right. Like there's so many instances in life where I'm just like, I want to be cool with you, but damn, you just did some white shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you just said some white boy shit, you said some white girl shit, you disrespected, and I was like, damn, I'm trying to build with you, And
is it even worth hipping them to it?
Right.
Is it even worth saying, yo, hold up, let's go? When you just said that,
it could be exhausting.
That was ridiculous.
It could be exhausting just
and
trying to
happens,
like.
I mean, more often than not, from my experience, and I know that there are a lot of things tied into it, appearance and all that stuff included, right? So if I'm telling you messed up, and it sounds like I'm angry and I'm not, though, it's just a passionate topic, that's probably going to put you in a position where you got to be defensive and not open to hearing the message, right? So I feel like I've learned in my travels that it's got to be really out there for me to really pull your coat. Or we got to be in a space where you can hear me saying that. Because the way I say it might not be the way you're used to hearing it said.
Right.
You know, and I feel like that is something I might have to tap one of my homies that's more diplomatic in a lot of ways. Some things happen, something at work unrelated to this happened where I had to tell my peoples like, yo, I love y'all, man. The way you did that, I was on some disengage, appreciate the humor in the situation. Or I would have had to get up and throw a chair. Like, you know, this is the only options in my brain, right? But the way they sort of finessed it to be okay, we hear you. Let's push it to a different discussion time was fascinating. And I feel like we got to have those people too. It's very much in the same vein of like, know your lane, know what you're good at, what you're not good at. If you get stuck in the bathroom, I'm coming to kick the door down, right? If you need to have a diplomatic conversation about something, I got to be in a certain space. I probably shouldn't be your first choice, right? So, I mean, you got to know where you fit. You know?
And Iris is bringing it. Iris, you should be here. Come here.
You should be here.
Join us next time. But Iris is talking about also too, like there's, you know, people are quick to side with the oppressor or oppressive colonial mentality and orientation. So, like, you know, I can be down, but then when stuff gets tough, you know, who's going to be the ones that stick around and who's going to be the ones that kind of tap into their privilege? You know, all that kind of stuff is definitely stuff that comes always up. You know, so always, too, when I'm organizing on a multinational level and it has something to do, you know, I mean, a lot of times it has to do with race and all this kind of stuff. But I'm always like making sure I'm putting up those security parameters for myself and also the work to make sure that, you know, the work is protected regardless of who's in the room and knowing, you know, when things can be said and can't be said. And, you know, and you know, that's just part of being a leader and developing your leadership. But, you know, and I understand, too, where people want to take a period of time of just building internally before they start opening up and building externally. But there's a way to do that internal growth that is also not feeding into the hate and feeding into the confusion. Like, not everyone's going to walk in with the right political orientation.
Right.
You know what I mean? Most of us have the wrong political orientation on some stuff. Yeah. Even if we, you know, consider ourselves to be good, progressive, there's something that we're fucking up on because we're dealing with the baggage of society. So if we don't know how to work with one another and navigate that baggage, then we're just going to be in an echo chamber. Yeah. And we're not going to make a lot of progress. That's not to say that the Black Lives Matter community needs white participants. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that I'm not saying that at all. But I think it's important for long-term success to understand that we need to be able to deal with people and their baggage, and everyone's not perfect. Like, for instance, if someone comes into a room and starts saying faggot this, you know, faggot that, oh, you homo, we're going to be like, whoa, you know what I mean? Immediately. But maybe they're coming in on something else that they're really progressive. Are we going to just say you need to get out of this space? If they're harmful and they're dangerous and they're not open to receiving the critique, then of course they got to step it. But if they're coming out and they're receptive to the critique, they're acknowledging of what they're doing, then that's someone that you're building with. That's someone that you can call a comrade, you know? I
think that open-mindedness is key, right? So I've been in spaces where I feel like folks should be more aware, more, you know, observant of the current, you know, vibe in our world, right? Like if you're open-minded and you're trying to be progressive and you're going to remove certain phrases from your vocabulary, you're not going to have certain mindsets, right? This gender thing is heavy on my brain, right? And I feel like I've heard folks say things and I'm like, oh, you know, like that's kind of rough. And so then I got to check myself because I know that my reaction would probably put them in a worse place, not, you know, open. Even if they're open-minded, it just might be like, oh my God, like that was kind of aggressive, you know? So I feel like that's critical. What you said there is a lot of folks coming from a lot of different spaces, and if they're trying to support the movement and they do mess up, can they be corrected? Are they open to it? Do we have the right people in place to even correct, right? Because if everybody's on some, you know, wild and stuff, then we might not get anywhere, you know what I mean? So I feel like I'm all about a pluralism of approaches, ideas, experiences, because I feel like diversity and collaboration is necessary. Collaboration is necessary and has to have a diverse, you know, membership. But certain things are non-negotiable, right? Like you have to be open-minded. You know, you might be as progressive as, you know, whoever you want to say, but if you just have this certain perspective and this one thing that you're trying to get done, and that's why you're here, you might not be the one, like, for us. You know what I'm saying? Or, like, in my opinion. And so I feel like that it's important to figure all these things out. And I think that's what makes the left side so difficult a lot of times, right? Because it seems like, you know, the conservatives got their platforms. They're all on the same page in so many ways. And we have all these different things that we're trying to get done that need to get done. It sometimes feels like we're pulling each other in different directions. So, I mean, you know, this is tough. It's a tough time.
Yeah, I mean, I think for those who are not in power, it's always harder. You know what I mean? Like, for those who are in power, they got the access to privilege. They got the support. You know, for those of us who are being oppressed, you know, we're trying to, you know, work our way up and trying to alleviate ourselves of the chains.
Decolonization is real, right? I mean, no matter what.
And so even just like sitting in a room with each other can be hard, you know what I mean? And trying to figure out like, when are we going to meet next weekend? Who's going to be invited? And, you know, what's going to be on the agenda? Like, that stuff can take forever.
Can you be a revolutionary rocking Jordans?
You're right, exactly.
You know, like, that's the thing, right? People are looking at sometimes like, oh, this person's wearing Jordan. Right. You know, maybe not now, or maybe especially now, right, with the Kaepernick campaign thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so now these guys are trying to play us.
So maybe let's shift gears a little bit and talk about like the feminist movement.
Yeah.
Right? We're two cis males. You know, I would consider myself a feminist.
Yeah.
I don't know what camp you fall into. You don't like labels.
I hate labels, but I'm trying to move towards a genderless space, yo. I was joking before I left to come up here that with my hair out sometimes people think I'm like a big woman, and then when they come to the front, I see that like, oh damn, like that's quite a beard. That, you know, I feel like there's this weird, oh, that's a guy, you know, especially if I'm wearing all my crazy tie dye pink colors and stuff. Like that gender, you know, thing is in people's head. My son used to have crazy long hair when he was a kid. He's still a kid. When he was like 2 or 3, we'd be out. I'd be with my daughter and my son, and we all had long hair. And 9 times out of 10, people will come up and say, oh, you know, you're doing such a good job with your daughters. And I'm laughing because I appreciate the fact that they're not looking at his clothes, which were clearly boy clothes. Because, you know, it's tough to not have that, to not fall into that, you know, that trap of buying these gender-colored type clothes. Because all you see when you go there are, like, blues, greens, whatever for boys. So he's wearing, like, the boyiest stuff you can wear, but he has long hair. And they're, like, your daughters. And I'm like, thank you. That's my beautiful son, though. That was always my response, right? And then I would just laugh like, hey, you're coming up to a dude saying you're doing a good job with your daughters. I mean, there's so many levels there, right? They're assuming that I'm like babysitting my own kids, and they need to come say, good job, Dad. You know, Mom's not around. Your kids are still alive, right? And then it's like also boys can't have long hair. And I'm just like, damn, like I would just, you know, get tired of even having that conversation. I have to just be like, yeah, you know, keep it moving. And I feel like I get the labels, and I feel like when you're a member, when you're a group or a member of a group that has historically been oppressed, you have to sort of say, yo, we're here and we need to be treated equally. But I want to move towards a place where we don't need to have these labels, right?
Right. But I think totally in that struggle to get away to, you know, where race is not, you know, a thing, where these constructs don't exist, gender's not a thing, it doesn't exist. You know, to get there, we can't dilute them, though. You know,
that's what I'm saying. You know, I get it.
And the gender, you know, because the gender fluidity, and you know, this is a different question, but definitely, I mean, we don't want to get to the point where we're proponents of gender fluidity and then saying, oh, but there's no such thing as women's oppression. Right? That's this extreme, you know, and there are people that do fall into that camp. Yeah. But then also, too, so Iris said something, too, that made me think. She said, I think part of recognizing your privilege is recognizing how we participate in the oppression of others. Yeah. And so, so that's a part of that process of decolonization. You know, we have to go through that. We're children of this colonial reality. So we have to go through this process of unpackaging stuff. But I also want to say that I'm also sometimes in the camp where I think sometimes we talk a little bit too much. Yeah. And that we're sitting in rooms talking about who's oppressed the most, and all the privilege we have, and it becomes to a point where we're also not moving,
right?
And we're not doing any action. We're not out there. We're not putting ourselves out there because we're hypercritical of ourselves.
Yeah.
So I feel like we got to find this balance where we are having this self-critique and we're constantly evolving as a unit and as a movement, but at the same time we're moving, and sometimes we make mistakes when we move,
No
but
doubt.
that we just gotta sometimes
Movement
plow
is
forward.
important,
Yeah.
I feel like I've been in a place where I'm being so humbled by the world and by my own actions, and how I would have considered myself an ally as a feminist. I used to say I was a feminist, but it's like, okay, maybe I'm not as much of a feminist as the next person, and these people would have an issue with me calling myself a feminist. So I'm just gonna live my life and do what I think is best, and so I had this crazy moment last year where my toxic masculinity was on fleek, on 100,000 trillion or whatever, and my wife, who has always been the one that that checks me and makes me think about my actions, made me a reflective being. I sat there and I said, damn, that is some straight up man stuff that I just did. And I'm over here thinking I'm a feminist. I'm over here thinking I'm nah, but I just basically used force and aggression to communicate what I wanted with this person. And, I was almost got into a fight with this guy, and it was over something stupid, and she was telling me, don't do it, don't even worry about it, it's no big deal. And so she made me realize that in me sort of trying to defend her honor, I felt like she was disrespected. I ignored her request to not proceed with the physicality, right? And that right there is toxic masculinity. I'm disrespecting her in trying to protect her honor, so it's now I can't let him go now, and I just had this moment where I was like, damn, that's crazy, because I always prided myself on that protector role of silverback, apex, whatever it is, for my family, for my wife, for my moms, for my dad, even for my kids now, and realizing that's such a toxically masculine thing or way to be, what I'm saying? And it's hard. I'm having a hard time shaking it, because that's who I've been my whole life, and so I had that moment where I said, damn, I can't call myself a feminist, because I'm doing these little things, right? So it got so bad, I was so in my head about it that I was like, even on some gentleman shit, I'm not holding the door no more for women. They can do it. Why do I have to hold the door? Chivalry, what is that? So I would be waiting for the train. I think I made a joke about this before. But this is not a joke. It's true, though. I'll be waiting for the train, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going on first. I'm not letting you go on first just because you're a woman, And then I was like, that's overthinking it, because that's just too much, So now it's whatever. I feel like I don't have a stance either way. Who you want to go, you go. I let guys go now too, Here you go. I hold the door for a guy. So, but that's the level where I got so messed up. I was like, damn. Is everything I do wrong, in this area? And
what I think, but for me, the way I define it, is, you're engaged in that conversation with your partner and with yourself, and that engagement and identifying kind of what Iris is talking about, this identification of the toxic behaviors that we might be doing, the oppressive kind of behaviors, the colonial behavior, that we can't shake that in a lifetime, that's with us, even if sometimes its manifestation is coming out of goodwill and caring for your family,
right?
So, but I think being engaged in that process is how I would define playing your feminist allyship role, you know what I mean? Obviously there's more work you got to do as a man, to make sure that.
But that is the decolonization process.
Yeah,
and it's seeing where you
exactly.
fucked up and being like, you know what, I gotta do this work.
Right.
And it's painful, and it should be.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Yeah, because it's painful, but you have a lot of privilege as a man.
Yeah.
So we got to deal with that pain and that self work. And yes, and also too, this is another point that I was gonna mention. That Iris, you just need to be here. Can we get her in here? Is there a way to video stream her in?
Invite her.
How do we invite? How do you?
She can request to join.
Request to invite, and we'll get you on this video right now. Unless you you don't want to be on camera right now. But this this idea, she said, to deprogram ourselves. Like, as men, we have to deprogram ourselves in terms of our masculinity, but then women too. I mean, women have to go through their own process. Just because a woman is a woman and is pro-woman power on some levels and identifies as a feminist, they could be super oppressive. I mean, there's tons of these white liberal feminists who are super racist and super classist and super privileged, but they're leading these feminist marches. You know what I mean? Like, are they more of a feminist than I? Or, I mean, not to get into this battle of who's more of a feminist, but I think it's important that people, like I said, the labels can be kind of constricting, and, people just need to know, are you on the right path? Are you doing the right work? She said, don't have makeup on. All right, I feel you.
I don't have makeup on either.
I do have makeup on. I don't know if you can tell.
He really does.
Arsenio did some application to me before.
We getting our cosplay on.
She said the patriarchy. Yep. The makeup.
Oh, yeah. Jesus.
You know what I'm saying? We got to decolonize, Iris. Fuck that makeup, yo. Right? She's like, fuck you.
Yo, A Keys did it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think for sure a lot of my training in terms of women's rights and having an orientation towards women's rights comes from my mom, who was a big time feminist and who still is, and so she really put me in check from a very young age.
Yeah.
That goes back to our conversation last episode about the role of parents.
Yep.
And making sure that they're getting all this programming in school and in the media and from socialization, and a lot of that programming comes with a lot of the bullshit. And so as parents, we got to be super diligent, crush it when we can. Like stuff with like gender, like it's so easy to play into it, but we got to start having those conversations. Like, for instance, like how many times does my daughter say something like, like, oh, daddy, you're pretty. And I'm like, oh, thanks, baby. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I have to check myself. Like, I could be like, oh, you don't call daddy pretty, but that's part of this deprogramming, these little things, these little subtle moments.
It's crazy because I have a boy and a girl that he just says things that I know he must have heard somewhere, because we don't speak like this. I'm stronger because I'm a boy, Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, okay, well, yeah, you're stronger right now because you're bigger and you are stronger, but that doesn't mean it's because you're a boy, right? And I'd have to give him examples and of women in my family who are stronger than the men because they're bigger than the men and stuff like that, I'm trying to be vague because I don't want nobody to get upset. But
yo, Juan, what up? Yo, Juan, you in the building? You joined the Instagram Live. You in the building? Big up to Juan.
Yeah, Juan.
Juan is the cultural coordinator here at the People's Forum.
Oh, that's dope. Come through, bro.
Yo, you got to come through for these episodes Thursday nights, bro. We got the Himalayan sea salt joints. Come through. He said, nah. Nah, you not in the building, or nah, you ain't fucking with us?
He's like, nah, no chips.
Oh, he had to go home. All right. Fair enough. So what you were saying?
Who knows?
You were talking about deprogramming your kid.
Oh, it's so hard. It's so hard. It's so. And then I had a relative.
How are we gonna deprogram the kids if we not deprogrammed?
Right. Also, it's like it nonstop. It could be nonstop. Right. So then all I'll be out there doing is being like, "Yo, don't say that. Why are you thinking that? This is crazy." And then it's like they're shutting me out because I'm constantly saying, "Nah, don't say that." By the way, my daughter is a beast, and she is as strong as my son now because she grew and. She having those beast mode moments.
Are these kettle chips?
Nah,
we fucked up. This is deli style potato chips, but they got that Himalayan sea salt. So it makes us feel like we're doing something good.
Shawn is taking that.
Are they organic?
It's my fault.
Damn, they're not even organic.
They're non-GMO though.
Non-GMO. They're not
no
modified.
Artificial preservatives.
Yes, Juan. The next one for sure. Yeah, I mean, like, for instance, the baby. I mean, first of all, it's like, whatever. So the baby, she when we found out that we were gonna have a little girl, obviously as a man, I'm like, oh man, like this is a big responsibility, all that kind of stuff. But we're like, yo, we're gonna be super gender neutral.
Yeah.
We're gonna get all the yellows and all the greens and be super gender neutral, and just like from jump, we told everybody like, don't bring pink, blah blah blah. But now you walk into my house 3.5, 4 years later. and the whole house is pink.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we've talked about this, but that's just, I mean, is it programming? Is she getting brainwashed?
It's so hard to say.
Know,
I'm sure part of it is.
Yeah.
Because of whatever she's watching or seeing, or they're all gendered. You know what I mean? I had a relative come visit, and he was teaching my son. This is my dude, so it was no beef, but it was hilarious because he was telling my son, yo, do this blink, do this little wink. This is how you mac. This is the way we do it. And my daughter was right there, and she's said,
like, I want to learn how to mac.
Is this how you do it? He's like, nah. You can't do it. Like no boyfriends for you. Till you're 35 type joint, right? And so we've had the conversation with my daughter. It's all on you. Don't rush things. But it's not like we're doing the you can have a girlfriend, you can't have a boyfriend type thing. But that's things that she might hear. And so it was hilarious because that was a moment we were driving somewhere and we were all in the car, and me and my wife looked at each other like, do we say it right now? Do we say it right now? And so, you gotta pick and choose. I know. My daughter actually checked him, and then
what'd she say?
In a very loving way, she was like, "Well, I want to wink. Why can't I wink?
Nice.
It doesn't matter if I'm a boy or a girl." And so then, I looked at her and I gave her a little wink, and then, then we definitely unpacked that later on. And she got it. She understood. She was with it. And he was saying all this stuff because he has a daughter too, about like how he gotta send his little nephew to her class because there's boys that like her. So my daughter was laughing at that. And now we all be winking at each other the way he was showing my son. So we made it a kind of like a funny thing.
And the little kids, they also they absorb this good orientation better because they're not as programmed. You know what I mean? They're a little bit fresher. But it was funny on a funny note, we're always critiquing the gentrifiers in the neighborhood that I live in, the Lower East Side, who happen to be primarily white folks. Yeah. And so he's like, oh, these white people messing up the space, blah, blah. So now the baby's like, oh, white people here? It's going to be bad? Cause I'm like, oh. So I'm like, no. Yo. I'm not going to stop her, but.
Hilarious. That's hilarious.
So, yeah, we got to be mindful. I mean, we got to be a little bit more diplomatic than them, I think. They get.
We got all kinds of code words.
Yes.
For these kinds of things.
Yes. Yes, the pilgrims.
Yeah,
so in any case, so we're going to wrap up. What would be one message that you send to the activist who's part of a struggle?
Speak
in
your
terms
truth,
in terms of how like they relate to others. It together.
I would say speak your truth. Like keep doing the things that you think are necessary for from your perspective, from your experience. But don't be reticent. Don't close out other folks that can support. If they're trying to take too much of the shine, if they're trying to be in too much of a leadership role, then you got to check them. And of course, if they're not responsive to that, then you got to chin check them. They got to they got to kick rocks. But keep that message pure, and also invite folks that want to embrace that message, learn about the message, understand why that is the message, invite them in, allow them to learn, because we got to have folks present on all levels to take the message out. I'm a firm believer in that. You know what I'm saying? They got to go in their circles and preach that stuff to folks that might change their minds, and that's how we learn from each other, And in terms of like the allies, I feel like, find a place where you can learn from folks that are doing the work, that have experienced it firsthand, and see how you can support. If you have more organization skills, whatever. I don't believe in the language dynamic, because I feel like that is another construct of the structure that's in place. That's another gatekeeping model. If you don't speak proper, you're not going to be taken seriously. We got folks in the community. We got folks in the community that will step in if that's an issue, right? If they feel like it's hurting the message, we can, check on that. But really, that's just another way to say, no, you don't belong because you can't say this word right, or you can't say these words. Nah, like I got off that. And I work with young people, and I'm in a position where most of the people I work with value that, as a means, as a way to, progress and better yourself. I'm very much about the ideas. We can work on how you choose to communicate them, but if the ideas are sound, that's all that matters,
Yeah, I would say to the activists that, don't get caught up in, pigeonholed. Don't get pigeonholed into these identities. Have your identities. fight for, liberation associated with these identities, but we're multidimensional beings, you know what I mean? Like, I'm more than just like a Puerto Rican who grew up in New York City. I'm more than just a fitness dude. I'm more than just, the things that I might present myself as on a regular basis. And there's a lot more unity if we start looking at ourselves, I think, in this multidimensional way, and understanding that, you don't owe no one anything, especially folks who are coming from privilege. Like, you don't owe white people anything. You don't own anyone who's not part of your struggle anything, but knowing that there is potential for multinational unity, and really, in the United States especially, we need multinational unity in a lot of different regions. We live in New York City, so it's very easy to be in a very people of color space.
Right.
But there's parts of this country where it's really hard to be in a people of color space, and how do you navigate those waters and all that kind of stuff. So finding those folks who are really down to put in work and who are down to go shoulder to shoulder with you in the struggle. Always, of course, being mindful and securing yourself, protecting yourself, and knowing that there's potential that they could mess up, and having the systems in place to protect against that, I think, is key. But being and you can also too, you can organize internally and then find points of unity externally. You know what I mean? Like, we can be just organizing, in this Puerto Rican community, in this Puerto Rican space, organizing around Puerto Rican issues, and then when there's overlap with other struggles, which is always going to happen, then we link up with these other organizations and we come in with our voice and our message and our orientation. There's definitely a lot of room for that kind of stuff too. And then what I would say is to this allies, I'm not a fan of the word ally.
Yeah.
I think I told you this before. I'm more so like, I want a comrade. I want someone who's going to really be down to put in work, and not someone who's just there trying to elevate themselves or trying to look good or trying to be down. Like, don't say all the right words and be at all the meetings and think that you're cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not what it's about. It's like, Are you going to do the work are you going to alleviate the work that I don't want to do? Yeah. Right? The administrative work, the back end work, so I can do the really important work. If you're going to do that kind of stuff, are you going to be, like, for instance, like, I have people who are not Puerto Rican who have educated me on Puerto Rico. Like, there's that space, you know what I mean? Like, I've had people who are not people of color who've educated me on Black history. Yeah. You know what I mean? But at the same time, they know their role, they know their space, and they know that even though they might have access to this information, that they need to make sure that I'm at the forefront on struggles around Puerto Rico, for instance. So in any case, so think more about, like, how can I be more of a comrade? And how can I be open to the critiques and all that kind of stuff? Iris had some final words. She said, the group has to consider you an ally. Right, you have to get approval from the group that you're working with to work in their space. That's their space, and you have to be invited in. And then once invited in, you have to continually prove that you deserve to be there for sure.
I'm a fan of one point I'm a fan of all the points you made, but the one point that really stuck out to me was we are complex individuals. You have to make space for that. I mean, so many of our leaders in the civil rights movement and all kinds of, people's movements across the history of the world have had flaws that may have, sort of like pushed up on the things they were preaching and the values that they were trying to, have us live by. So, I mean, that's a very strong reality. And we are all living in this system that we're all trying to, free ourselves from, right? And so I think that that's huge. You can't forget that we're people, right? Like, I had this moment where I was looking at this young person and I was sort of like, damn, y'all got this materialism for real. But, like, that might be a critical way for that person to survive where they live. If they don't have the latest whatever, they might be picked on, jumped, killed type stuff, right? So that's a way that they have to survive. And we understand why that is, right? The materialism that exists in the world today. But I'm just saying that was a moment I had. Like, I shouldn't, like, clown this kid for watching this video, this kid that had all this polo stuff everywhere. Like, this is his reality. This is his reality. I should kick game to him and support and uplift him, not play him or make fun of the fact that he's wasting time watching this dumb video. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like that moment I was like, you know what? That's his reality. He's a human in that way. I'm not going to critique that or be too critical. And I feel like that's something that more folks in the activist community, from my perspective, need to really pay attention to. You know what I'm saying? Don't limit someone. Don't not take J-Lo $6 million from the hurricane relief because she's at an event with whoever. Yo, take that money. Spend that money where it needs to be spent. Or hit her up and say, these are the organizations that you need to give the money to. She got the money to give. Let's take it and give it to the people that need it, that are going to do good things with it. You know what I'm saying? Don't not take it because you don't like her politics or who she knows. Like, that's the kind of thing where I'm like, but you're doing a disservice, right? Because now we don't have that money. You know, so how many you know, people could have been fed, or you know, how much infrastructure could have been rebuilt with that money. You know what I mean?
And also, I think too, like, just to wrap up because we're coming close to time, invite her in, call her in. Damn, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, it's just like this idea that just because I'm critiquing you doesn't mean I can't work with you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or like just because I'm working with you doesn't mean I can't critique
like, yo,
you.
come J-Lo, let's get this money. But by the way, don't be rocking with
Wait,
such
come
and
in here
such
real
and
quick.
such.
Come in here real quick. We're doing our podcast, but we want you to talk a little bit about the space.
Oh, Lord.
You ready?
Where are my lines?
Come on,
Boom!
right here.
But you got to get in front of the camera. Come over here.
What up?
So that's the main camera, and this is just a little Instagram feed.
Oh, okay.
So we just got joined by Sierra. What's up?
Hey, you want to take this?
No, it's fine.
You sure?
Yeah. So we were talking a little bit in the beginning about the space, but maybe you could break down to the audience more about the People's Forum.
Yeah. So the People's Forum, we're a movement incubator, meaning that we're looking to build community here in New York City across geographical lines, like the boroughs. I'm from Florida, but I just moved up here. And I told myself when I moved up here that I wouldn't just stay in my borough, but I'm totally that person. I never leave it. So this is a place for folks around the city to be able to get together. We're right off the Times Square exit, so every train comes through here. We're here to unite the poor and working class. So workers, young people, in the belly of the freaking beast. Organizations, artists, that's our main groups that we're trying to build with. Political education courses, culture, so performances, musical events, podcasts, what have you
got this month? Like, what kind of stuff, so people get a sense of the different kind of
Lord.
things that are happening? There's a lot happening. I feel like every night.
Or you can tell them like how they can find out what's happening.
I like you. Yeah. So you can check us out on the People's Forum, peoplesforum.org. That's our website. And then we're also on all the social medias at People's Forum NYC.
Can we make a handshake right now?
We're going to make a... Is this a People's Forum handshake?
Yeah, should we do it like that? Do we got to throw peas in?
Peas.
And it's also the bird. Fly.
The dove.
What part of Florida?
Miami.
Hey,
nice.
got hella folks in Miami.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I moved up just in time for winter last year.
Perfect.
Ooh, let's
and
see.
this week we had the film showing happening this week. What film is that?
Yeah, so it was a film brought to us by the Congo and Ferguson. It's an organization that is making ties from like exploitation and oppression that's happening in the Congo to what's going on with Black folks here in the United States. So they have a film that they're showing this week at the Meisleys Theater in Harlem, and so they had the reception here. We're really close with the folks in the organization, really, really solid organizers and people in struggle that,
And then tonight, what you had going on?
Oh, tonight? I taught a class tonight.
Wow.
Yeah, so I taught a class around, like, who's the poor and who are the rich, in the United States. Class relationships are very obscure, and folks oftentimes don't know where they stand along the spectrum.
Yeah.
And so that leads to, a lot of disunity, a lot of, fighting against people who are, in our own, class, our own, revolutionary group of people that we should be struggling with and building with.
That's kind of like what we were
just
tonight.
Is that because they don't recognize where they actually are?
I think there's a lot of reasons.
I think
there's a lot of reasons. I think that, in this country especially, like, folks are taught that being poor is, something that is an individual inherent flaw. or you fucked up in some kind of way, or you just slipped and fell into poverty. You know, whatever magical explanation that they give for folks being poor. And, you know, we understand that poverty, I mean, it comes from, you know, the Latin root word protokos, which means those who have been made poor. So we understand poverty as a system that is impoverishing folks, that are exploiting, you know, people. And I think that in this country, you know, folks get confused. You get a cell phone, you have a car, all of a sudden you're middle class or you're rich, but you don't have anything in your refrigerator.
Right.
And folks are able to use, you know, differences among us, like race, like gender, like sexual orientation, what have you, to make us confused about who the enemy is. When the enemy, you know, they may look like us, you know, and oftentimes they do, especially nowadays.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, right?
He was going off?
No, it was a conspiracy theorist that was putting Neil deGrasse Tyson under the boat. But
okay.
He probably won't want to be called a conspiracy theorist. That guy.
So like the programming.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, you're ready for this podcast. So the programming, like how much does it cost? Like how do people access it?
Yes.
I think that's an important part of it.
Yeah,
because it's in the middle of Times Square, so typically
to
that would
sit
be
down here.
expensive.
How you gonna have me sit down on the last question?
This ain't the last
But this might not be the last
the
question.
beginning of the second podcast.
Oh
We're
my
going into
gosh!
next
Oh my
week.
gosh! Oh my gosh!
I'm gonna just stand here like the security.
There you go.
So access, oh, that's the camera. So access is always an issue for a lot of this education.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it becomes this echo chamber where it's just a bunch of people with semi-privilege talking to other folks. So how y'all tackling that?
I mean, the way that we're tackling it is, I mean, well, one, everything is sliding scale. And, you know, with the People's Forum, we make it very clear, you know, you might be able to rent space here, but we're not a rental space. We have a co-working program that we're starting in November, but we're not a co-working space. Like, this is not WeWork. We are not providing a service. We consider ourselves comrades, and we're really trying to build community here in New York City, you know, to strengthen the movement and not just, you know, to unite the left, because that can often get divisive as well, but to unite poor and working class people. Come on over. And so everything that we do here is based off of a sliding scale from membership. If you're a part of an organization who's aligned with working class, you know, folks, or if you're an artist, starting at $50 a year, if your budget's under $100,000, which most of the people that we bring in here are, because those are the people that, you know, like are in our networks. So that sliding scale, in terms of the classes and events, anyone can attend. You can check us out, like, again, online on our website, peoplesforum.org, or People's Forum NYC on social media. Most of all of our classes are free. If not, they're sliding scale. But, you know, our policy is no one will be turned away. So we hold on to that.
That's awesome, yeah.
I mean, because...
But some people might get, like, my instincts always is when stuff is cheap, when stuff is free, there's some ulterior motive. Like, is the Church of Latter-day Saints running the show behind the scenes? So how are y'all able to, you know, make the space so available? Like, give a little bit of a lens behind, you know, people a little bit of perspective so that they understand how this space has materialized, so that that trust can be
It's not L. Ron
fostered.
Hubbard.
Yeah, like, who's, you know,
This
like,
Wakandan
because when you walk
vibranium
into the
sound.
Everyone says that.
when you walk into the space, it's like, you know, people of color ran. It's definitely multinational, but there's, I mean, from my perspective, a lot of female or queer leadership. Like, that sounds like too good to be true.
Right.
How is that happening?
Like
How did that manifest?
Blessings on blessings.
Nice.
No, I mean, you know, to be real, is we had an anonymous donor. Like, once a month, we get a check that says it's from an anonymous person.
Comrade.
Yes.
I mean,
Comradeship.
I'm not trying to, like, do some feel-good story, but, like, sometimes shit just is good.
It works out.
And there is definitely ulterior motive in this space. We're trying to build up leadership of the poor and dispossessed so that we can build relationships, so we can take action together. Like I said, we're building a community. This is not just a space, you know, to attend classes and, like, walk around, you know, smart. Like, no, we're training people to be in struggle. We're training people to be the leaders that we need to, you know, move our society forward, push it forward. And so, yeah, I mean, that's what we're
great,
about.
yeah. I mean, I think you're right, though. You know, it's like there's so much positive action being put in by the folks who are behind this effort and the organizations who are joining in that, you know, things are just manifesting. And it's not like some, you know, thing in the air. It's like real. Like we're making it manifest.
Right.
You know, our energy and our creativity and our activism and our struggle
We
is
won't
making
be denied
it happen.
any longer.
That's right.
That's right.
Cool.
Politically,
Sierra,
yeah.
thanks for coming
Thank you.
onto the show. we got the wings.
Yeah,
We put you on the
tattoos.
spot. You just saw
Tattoos
the class.
coming.
You know?
We're like, talk more.
We getting it.
All right, are y'all
Give us
already
the
about to
next
go to
time.
Can
another
you come
session right
just
now?
be one of our co-hosts?
We're gonna pull you in every time we're in here, every Thursday.
Oh my god.
We're gonna figure it out. Juan already said he's trying to be up in here.
Yo,
Oh,
we
really?
need. We're
Good.
gonna have the.
So
we're
we'll
gonna
have
have
you
the
sneak in.
squad.
The squad. Yeah. So what's your name?
I go by many names. Rene is one of them.
Oh,
I'm
you're
like
ready
the
for
man of
Rene.
many faces over here.
That's right.
One of them is
Rene.
Rene.
Yeah.
What's another one?
Cal Nutso.
We were just talking about how this is vibranium, right?
The
From Black Panther.
vibranium, yeah, like
And you-
sound.
We're not Black
magnetism?
Panther. We're not.
So you know,
She's like, I'm not
one
trying
of
to
the
be-
albino Jabaris
Oh Lord. Yeah.
from
no.
Puerto Rico.
Word. All right, cool. So,
Hey yo,
thanks, Sierra. Thanks
we
for
out.
the
Oh, we're
forum.
still on here.
Yes, we cut it. We're going. Yeah,
I thought
we
you turned it off
live.
already.
We didn't turn it off. We
That's
never
why I was
turned it
being
off.
extra vague about my whereabouts. Area 32, it's your boy.
Yeah. So check out the People's Forum. Go to peoplesforum.org. You know, definitely come to the space. Participate in one of the courses,
Coffee
classes.
shop is opening in a couple of
Mhm.
weeks, so you can come check out a book, sit here, read.
There's
grab
a
some
full
tea.
library.
I might make you a macchiato. You play your cards right.
Rene's not gonna be behind the cafe. He's just gonna be making
I'll just be making
macchiatos
macchiatos.
in the broom closet. All right.
Bang.
All right, y'all. Good seeing y'all. We'll talk to y'all next week.
Yeah,
Peace.
love.
All right.
That's fun. You are a